Have you dreamed of bigger things for your life? Then you are in the right place. Each week, you will be given tips on how to change your inner dialogue, conquer your goals, and ways to step into a higher version of yourself. I'm your host, Lauren Kubat. I'm a motivational speaker who hosts personal development events. I'm a sought-after fitness instructor, a wife, and a mom of 2 young boys. I'm obsessed with all things personal development, and I believe anyone can achieve the life they want. Let the Become Your Vision podcast be the inspiration you need to step into greater things. Now let's go. Hey guys, welcome to the show. Today I am super excited because I have a registered dietitian on the show. Her name is Adrianne Delgado. Adrianne is a registered licensed dietitian and has almost 20 years of experience in outpatient nutrition care. Adrianne's passion includes helping her patients have a positive relationship with food, improving energy levels, and empowering her clients to live their best life. As a working mother of 5 children, she understands firsthand the challenges of balancing health and responsibilities. Adrianne's specialty involves teaching clients how to create new habits, which include mindful eating tips and techniques, and Root Work, a unique program designed to figure out why we over-desire food and how to create healthier habits. In 2019, Adrianne became an author to her first book, Nourish, Eat, Repeat, A Busy Woman's Guide to a Healthier Mind, Body, and Life. Adrianne is also a public speaker and is the host of the podcast, Nourish, Eat, Repeat. Adrianne resides in Philadelphia with her husband and children. She enjoys running, cooking, tending to her fruit and vegetable gardens, and spending time with family. So, Adrianne, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Lauren. I'm just so happy to be here today.
Yay. So first of all, we were talking before I started to hit record, and Adrianne has 5 children, and I feel like that is not something that we can comb over. That is how do you do it?
Well, okay, so I do say the plan was only for 4, but my last 2 are a set of twins.
Okay.
So I have 3 boys, and I was just that one more time, let's just see if we can get a girl. And lo and behold, it was twin girls. We did not know the sex for any of my kids. So trying to come up with a bunch, we did literally come up with 8 names between first and middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a circus, but I can't imagine it any other way. We're a traveling circus. We triple the party wherever we go.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. That's like super mom status right there. And it was funny because, she was saying too, before I hit record, that she, to do this podcast, she sent her kids outside, they're playing in the snow, and you just got to make it work, handle it,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are past the infancy stage. My youngest the girls are 9. Okay. So we're starting to, come into a time where they're a lot more independent. They don't need our close supervision, but
yeah.
Bigger kids, bigger problems. So there's all of that too.
That's true. I've heard that before. Okay. So, today we're going to talk about the relationship we have with food. But before we get into that, will you share what the difference is between a registered dietitian, a licensed dietitian, if there, is a difference there, and then as to compared to somebody that gets a certificate online?
Sure. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of confusion because there's nutritionists, there's certified nutrition, there's licensed, there's registered. So the easiest way to describe it is a registered dietitian has gone through an accredited program through a university. Now they need to have their graduate degree, and then they do a 9-month internship where they really do a deep dive into clinical nutrition, food service, community nutrition, have to sit for a national exam, pass the exam to be considered a registered dietitian. Each state has its own licensing laws. So depending on what state you live in, will determine whether or not you have an additional license attached to your name. Nutritionist is a fairly loose term. Somebody can go away on a weekend retreat and come out with a nutritionist degree. So it is really important to know where and who you're getting your information from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as like a registered dietitian, a hospital would only employ a registered dietitian because they are looked at as the ones with the highest education and authority in that line. So, again, there are some really great nutritionists out there,
Mm-hmm.
but you just want to make sure that they have gone through a vigorous program. But if you really want to make sure that's not a factor, like you don't have to worry, is this a one that just did a weekend retreat, or is this somebody who actually did a lot of schooling? A registered dietitian is the way to go.
Okay. And when I was looking for it, because I've been wanting to have a registered dietitian on the show, and, we both belong to like a podcast community or whatever. And it was very important that I put like registered dietitian because there's such a huge difference than if like somebody gets their, certificate or something like you said over the weekend or something of that nature. So, yes. Okay. So now, how did you get into like nutrition? When did you start? Like what interested you in this field?
Well, actually, I started out in college as a pre-med major.
Oh.
I knew I loved science. I wanted to help people, so it just made sense that I was going to do the doctor career.
Mm.
And then one day, so I was in this club called Future Health Professionals, where they would invite specialists like cardiologists and gastroenterologists into our meetings where they could really talk about their practice and their craft. So to help us figure out what direction we want to go after our undergraduate. And out of nowhere, I was pretty shy in school, but I remember it was a pediatrician who was up at the board talking about his practice, and all of a sudden I just shot my hand up in the air, completely interrupted his thought, and I said, "Do you have kids? Do you have a family? Do you get to see your family? What are your
Wow.
hours like?" And he was kind of taken aback because obviously he was not talking about that in the moment. And he said, "Actually, I have 2 kids, but I unfortunately don't get to see them that
Right.
often because of being on call."
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the very next day, I signed myself out of the pre-med program, but I figured I have got to figure out, how do I not lose all these credits? Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
taken physics and calculus and all these classes
Oh my
in
God.
school. To start all over seemed overwhelming. So I just went through the course catalog. I found nutrition, took my first class, and the rest is history. So my career started out in clinical. So I worked in hospitals for a while. And then I had kids. And so stayed at home with my first 2 for a year or 2, and then started teaching outpatient weight loss programs through the hospital. And then I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I think I can do this myself. I think I can open up my own private practice. And so that was in 2013. And today, we are a team of 8 dietitians at my practice. And
Amazing.
yeah, so it's been such a fun ride, from going from clinical, staying at home, to going back at it and now having a really successful, thriving practice.
That is huge. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I like that you asked those questions and you did it before you had kids and you knew to ask that because imagine like if you had this degree and then you found out like, oh, I'm not going to see my kids, like you knew the direction you wanted your life to go. And just having the courage to stop him mid-sentence, to really hone into like what his life is, like blah, blah, blah. But this is life, are you going to see your kids?
Right. Yeah, I always knew I wanted a big family. I didn't know I was going to obviously have 5, but I knew that was part of the plan. And so I
Mhm.
needed to find a career path that would allow for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so with the relationship that we have with food, what do you think when people label food as like good versus bad, or saying things like, I had a good day today, or I cheated today. What is your opinion? How do you, I guess, change that train of thought?
Yeah, that's a great question because that's probably one of the most common things that I hear in my practice. Like, oh, I was so good today. I can't wait to tell you what I did. Or, oh, I was so bad this weekend.
Mhm.
So they're almost, we throw those words around, good and bad, as they're harmless,
Mhm.
because, oh, you know what I mean. I was really bad this weekend. It's like a form of connection. Oh yeah, me too.
Mhm.
Um, but the problem when we categorize foods as good or bad is it slowly diminishes our relationship with food and with our bodies.
Mhm.
So there's actually a lot of harm in that, in that simple phrase, I was good today, I was bad today.
Mhm.
Um, and so there's a couple things that happen when you start labeling foods as good or bad. Um, Number one, you start to think of yourself then as good or bad, right?
Mhm.
When you say I ate a bad food, eventually that thought turns into I was bad because I ate the bad food.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, we can talk about the simple phrase, well, did you steal the food? Which most people would say, no, of course
Right.
not. But they're assigning almost a moral label to a food. And therefore, if I ate a bad food, then therefore I was bad.
Mhm.
And we have to just really be careful about the words we repeat in our heads because our brains will believe whatever we repeat,
Mhm.
true or untrue.
Yes.
So that's one of the big things we have to be careful. Um, if we start to label foods as bad, we start to actually become more obsessed with those foods because our brain is wired to think about them more because we've put them on the taboo list. So if I think of a piece of cake as a bad food, just start to notice how many of your thoughts become directed to cake
Mm.
because it's the forbidden food. I
Right.
can't have it. Or I can't be trusted around it because if I have cake in the house, I'll eat all the cake,
That is so true. It's like
right?
you're even more tempted by it. So, okay, so if you're working with a client and they're saying, like, I was bad this weekend, or, I cheated or whatever, how do you start to change that relationship that they have with food and how they label food?
So the first part is just awareness,
Okay.
even letting them recognize that
Mhm.
we don't say that,
Yeah.
right? Because again, most people don't even know that they're saying it
Right.
because it's just such common language, especially between women. They don't even know they're saying it and that there's harm to it.
Mhm.
So the first part is calling them out and letting them know, hey, when you have those thoughts, I was bad today, I was good today, stopping them in their tracks and replacing it with a more neutral
Right.
response. Because I think for so many of us, we want to go from where we're at all the way over to the other side
Mhm.
today, tomorrow, in the next hour. And sometimes we have to get to a place of neutral first before we can start to create more healing thoughts. Because our thoughts are what create our feelings.
Yeah.
And if we have the wrong thoughts, then it's going to keep us locked in that shame cycle that we often fall into because I was bad. Now, now I might as well just keep going because I already blew it. So I
Mhm.
might as well keep going because tomorrow I'm going to be better.
Right. Now, okay, so the labeling it is one thing, and then also having like guilt over, oh my gosh, I overindulged this weekend, and it's I've been there before too. Like, let's say I did overindulge over the weekend, and then comes Monday or whatever, and there is guilt over what I consumed, even, and then it becomes like almost like obsessive thoughts. Um, and that all has to deal with the relationship that we have with food. But why do you think we feel guilt over having more cake than, we probably should?
Well, Unfortunately, I think diet culture has done a lot
Yeah.
to, I would say, manipulate our thoughts around food. Diet culture is very black or white.
Right.
Like you follow the list of rules, and
Hmm.
you're either doing it and a rock star, or you're not and you fail and you fell off the wagon, and now you got to wait till you get more motivation to start back up again. Like there is no room for failure in a
Hmm.
diet. And that's why we know diets don't work, because they're not a long-term solution. And I think a lot of us will use the guilt and the shame as what we think are powerful motivators,
Hmm.
um, which can work in a very short-term capacity. But in terms of the long game, which we all know nutrition is, it actually can completely destroy any long-term success. So part of it is just recognizing, like, this is not serving me well. This is actually not getting me closer to the goal. Being very boring when it comes to telling the story about why you overate, because our brains love drama, right? So, oh, you don't understand. Like the kids were crazy and I had to work late and my boss was a mess. And so I got home and the house was trashed and I just had to have a couple glasses of wine, right?
Right. Yeah.
I had a couple glasses of wine. It's not that exciting of a story,
Right.
but you just simply state facts. What I always tell my clients, it's not the fact that you make a mistake.
Mhm.
It's your response to the mistake that is usually what gets people in trouble. So you have a glass of wine, okay. But if now you feel really bad about yourself because now you're not perfect and you screwed up again,
Mm.
you're never going to get this right. So I might as well just have the cookies. I might as well have the cheesesteak and everything else in the house, because tomorrow I'm going to have to double down and work even harder.
Yeah.
That's where the problems happen, not in the fact that you drank a glass of wine.
Right. And it becomes almost this self-sabotage, and we have such a I don't know, interesting relationship with food. We talk about the relationship that we have with our spouse and our children and family members, but there is such an uncategory that we have a family member and it's called food, that we can either use it to nourish us, we can use it to motivate us, we can use it to, you name it. Um, but why do you think there is such this, I guess, maybe not obsession, but this like thought process over like food all the time and wanting to quote unquote like get on a diet to lose weight? And so does that go back to the diet culture, you think?
Yeah, I think because they have created such a dependency,
Hmm.
you have to follow my rules or you can't be successful. And so we're always in that quest to find the rules. I think internally we want rules. We want boundaries, right? That makes us feel safer.
Hmm.
But when the rules are so constricting to the point where you can't, step a toe outside the line or else you're going to mess up, that's, I think, what creates this obsession. Like we think we want all the rules, but really we want to just be able to do what we want and what feels good to our body. But if we don't have that trust, and we don't trust ourselves around food, or don't trust our body's signals, or don't even know what signals to look for, then it's always going to create, an inner fight, or, an inner, I don't know what the word I want to use is.
Battle or
Yeah. And it,
back.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so what does it mean to eat intuitively?
So, intuitive eating is actually a practice where you listen to your body. It's one of the components is mindfulness, where you really stay present in the moment. You pay attention to your body's signals, and you eat in the moment, not necessarily to a set of rules, but paying attention to what does my body want right now. And it's very, very different than a diet that tells you this is how much volume you should eat and this is the types of foods you should eat. It allows you to kind of regain that trust again. The one thing we do have to be careful is a lot of times with intuitive eating, it's honoring your hunger signals and honoring your fullness cues. For some people, they don't know what they are because they've never learned to listen to them because they've always had a diet tell them what to do.
Right.
So that's part of the education piece is teaching them what to look for and then how to honor those cues. Because I think, identify, but a lot of my clients, they know what to look for, but then to honor them and listen to them, that's a whole nother, because all of those, I call them faulty defaults. There are faulty default thoughts that rise to the surface in the moment. And we don't even realize that they're there, but they are what keep us in the same habits. So, for example, if you struggle with overeating, eating past fullness, right? So we talk about what are the cues that your body sends you to let you know to stop eating, right? So one of them may be you start to feel some pushback in your pants, or just that little bit of uncomfortableness. Some people might notice that they start to slow down, that they're taking a couple more breaths in between bites. Those are all ways that your body communicates, hey, we're winding this down. The problem is what I call emotional fullness, right? We know what the physical fullness, but what if there's a couple more bites on my plate? Or I don't want to be wasteful, or it's only a couple more bites. It doesn't matter. I'll do it tomorrow, right? It's all those little thoughts that float to the surface that we don't pay attention to, but it's what drives our behavior all the time.
Yeah.
So intuitive eating is actually like sitting there and paying attention. What are your thoughts around this? And then coming up with more helpful thoughts. The one thing I do always caution people with is with intuitive eating, it's not only honoring your hunger and fullness cues, but it's being careful not to turn it into the hunger fullness diet, where I only eat when I'm hungry and I only stop when I'm full, because then all of a sudden you're just creating another diet, just with a different name. So it's a lot. One of my favorite quotes that I heard was, true discipline is inflexibility. And I think when it comes to diet and nutrition, if you can learn and master that, you're not going to have any problems.
Yeah, that's amazing. I recently had somebody who specializes in meditation, and she says a lot of times that we like tune out, and that's the same what you're saying with when it comes to food, like tuning in and paying attention to the cues. And oftentimes when we eat, we're also like multitasking, like during lunchtime, we're like going through our phone, or, at dinner, we're thinking about other things, and we're not really paying attention to the meal, I guess. It's a constant go, 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 but there is something so powerful when you can actually like slow down, look at your food, pay attention to how it's tasting and what does it sound like and things like that. And it sounds so silly, but it's like we don't take the time to actually enjoy food.
No, you're absolutely right. One of my favorite tips is to tell people, anytime you eat, you need to be in a seated position at the table, eating from a ceramic plate.
Ooh,
right?
Ceramic. I'm the
Yes.
paper plates queen because I hate doing dishes.
Right? So there's an investment involved, because if I got to get a plate out and I got to wash it, whoa, that's a whole nother level. But how often are you well, you're not at a party right now because of COVID, but how often are you maybe at a social gathering and you just, grab a couple pretzel sticks, right? Yeah. Very harmless. If I were to tell you, okay, if you're going to eat those pretzel sticks, I need you to go sit down at the table and put them on a plate. You're going to be like, I'm not getting a plate for 3 pretzel sticks. That's absurd.
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to get a plate and sit down at a table, then you're probably not that hungry.
Okay.
So it's it's kind of basically a moment, a defining moment. Like, is this what I really want to
Yeah.
do? Or am I just doing it in the moment because I see other people snacking, but I'm not really paying attention to my body's cues in the moment?
Okay. Now explain explain the paper plate versus the ceramic plate. What do you think that has to do with I don't know, proper nutrition or maybe eating intuitively better or what is that? What's behind that?
Oh, I mean, that's not necessarily like in a textbook anywhere. I just tell people, um, if you are invested enough to get a plate out of the cupboard and
Okay.
to wash it afterwards,
Okay.
then it means probably more likely that you are actually hungry.
Okay.
Where if it's something that is just a throwaway,
Yeah.
you know, for some of my clients, it's just getting them to stop eating behind the open cabinet door.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So because they don't want their kids to see what they're doing.
Oh,
So let's
I
just
get
hide.
it.
Or they're hiding behind the refrigerator door, shoving their face real quick because they don't want to share or they don't want anyone to know that they're eating it.
Yeah.
Right. So, a paper plate, obviously a paper plate would work just
Okay.
fine because it's creating a pause point. It's creating an
Like,
opportunity.
please don't make me do dishes.
But again, if you have to do a dish, then you're going
Yeah,
to ask yourself, is this what I really want to do in this
yeah,
moment?
yeah.
Um, Another trick is before you eat, and this is for my clients that are very tactile,
Okay.
is just take your index finger and trace your plate
Uh-huh.
before you eat. So that outer lip of your plate,
Uh-huh.
just go around there. And basically what it does is it connects your brain to the action of
Oh,
eating
okay.
versus just going in and starting to,
Snacking.
shovel food in. It's like, wait a second. Okay, stop what you're doing. We're eating right now,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, to multitasking, another quote I love is a Zen proverb, and it says, when you walk, walk, and when you eat, eat,
Ooh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, that is so true. Now, okay, so I'm like using a lot of like I guess personal examples, but
Sure.
I find that when we sit down to dinner or when we sit down for lunch, like I'm stressed the whole time. And like when I'm eating is like I feel like with our boys or whatever, like they're gonna ask me to get their water if I forget or whatever. Like I can't, like I'm constantly like worried about like is Charlie gonna fall off the chair or is Oliver gonna ask for something else, like is that a common thing and how can I guess like slow that down where eating together doesn't come like a stressful thing? Do you get that like that? Do you have that feeling? You have 5 kids.
Yeah. So actually, I got this tip from a friend. This is when
Mm,
my oldest kids were young, and I remember going over there for a play date.
mm.
And she said we were going to eat lunch together, and she said, "Do you want to eat your lunch first before we serve the kids?" And I was like, "Well, that's strange because usually it's let's get the kids situated
Right.
first, and then we will do what's left over." And
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh no, I find I enjoy my meal so much more when I can sit peacefully and
Wow.
eat it myself, and then I'll bring the kids in,
Uh-huh.
and that way it's not that I'm not going to sit with them
Right.
when they're eating, but that way if somebody spills their water, it's not an interruption to my meal where I get
Right.
to the point where I get resentful because,
Yeah.
oh, you dropped your fork, I'll be happy to go get you another one. And I sit
Right.
there and I talk to them. I mean, that's helpful when the kids are very little and you're
Yeah.
still doing a lot of that. um, you have to help them out more, and
Right.
then slowly you transition into a place where we all sit down and we eat together. But I thought that was genius. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was becoming so resentful
Yeah.
when my children wouldn't let me eat a hot meal
Right.
that I was shoving my face because I was trying to eat so quickly because you never knew when somebody was going to need something.
Mm-hmm.
And just that little shift of almost like the oxygen mask, taking care
Yeah.
of yourself so that you could
Yeah.
take care of others better was
Right.
really helpful.
I never thought about that, but well, I'll do that for lunch. Like I'll make sure like the kids eat and then I will eat. And then usually Oliver or Charlie, Oliver is our 4-year-old and Charlie's our 2-year-old. But then Ollie, he is such a foodie, which is good. He'll eat everything and anything. But then he asked me for my food. I'm like, dude, like I haven't eaten today. And then you just ate. And then now you're like, wanting to eat my food. But, I
Yeah.
guess that's just the nature of it.
Yes. Yeah. Because they don't have the capacity
Yes.
to
Yeah.
realize, oh, mom might want to eat too.
Yeah. She hungry too.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so before we move on, I want to get to the review of the week. This one comes from Jax Connor, titled Such a Great Podcast. They say, if you're looking for a fun, inspiring podcast from a self-starter, motivated mom star, you've met your perfect match. Lauren shares about her health journey as well as modern-day health and wellness strategies. She interviews tons of influential people who are making an impact in their communities. Lauren is funny, witty, and 100% worth the subscribe. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jax Connor. If you reach out to me, if you're listening to the show, you get a Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts gift card. So thank you. Okay, so now what does nutrient dense mean? And can you give the listeners some examples?
Okay. So sometimes we categorize foods as nutrient dense and energy dense. And
Okay,
notice I didn't say good or bad.
right. Yes.
Right? So nutrient dense means that for the volume of calories in that food. And so it might be helpful to back up a little bit and explain that calorie is actually a measurement of energy.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you're looking at how much or how many calories a particular food has, nutrient dense means that it has a ton of nutrients for the volume of calories. So a great example of this would be a vegetable. So a serving of vegetables, like let's say a serving of broccoli, is 25 calories. So very, very low in terms of caloric density, but in terms of nutrients, I mean, between all the vitamins and the minerals and the antioxidants and the phytonutrients and all the benefits you get in that 25 calories, that's what we would consider a nutrient dense food. An energy dense food is basically it has a lot of calories, but not so much nutrients attached to it. So, M&Ms would be an energy dense food. Tasty,
Yeah.
and, but a lot of calories for, I won't say a lot of nothing, but a lot of sugar,
Right.
but things that aren't necessarily bringing nutrients into our body.
Mm.
And one of the main things we have to remember when it comes to nutrient dense foods, because that is always the goal to, I always try to recommend at least 90% of your diet should be nutrient dense foods, because these are the foods that are going to make you feel your best. They're going to provide energy. When we think of macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, most people are familiar with these words. They are units of energy, but I like to describe them as their little locked boxes of energy. And it's really the vitamins and the minerals, the nutrients that serve as keys. And what they do is they go find those boxes and they unlock that energy so that you feel your best. There is absolutely a reason why you feel better and more energized when you eat fruits and vegetables, because these are the most nutrient dense foods out there, versus when you just eat calorie dense foods that maybe are filled with a lot of processed ingredients or sugar or saturated fats. They don't provide the same energy as nutrient dense foods, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. And I try to use the correct, I guess, like verbiage when it comes to, you know, teaching my kids, like that's going to make you run fast, or that's going to make you tired, or, changing that relationship around food. Because like I said, Ali, he will eat anything and everything, but he would also like snack all day, if he could. But I usually try to, like, if he does have like a snack, let's say it's like goldfish or something like that, the next thing he eats would be something that I say like nutritious, like something that comes from the earth, putting in things that like he can kind of understand. Is that what you would recommend with kids, or is there anything I should add to that? Because I don't want to say like things like growing up, like, oh, that's gonna make you fat if you're good. Not that my parents said that, but like that was like the diet culture is like that's fattening, or Diet Coke, do that because there's no calories. So I was brought up to think, low fat, 0 calories, fat in food is going to make you fat. So how do we like change that culture?
Right, because you don't want to make eating healthy a punishment,
Right.
right? Like, oh, these are our fun foods, but these are
Yeah.
the foods we have to eat. Like, you want them
Right.
to realize that there's room for all foods in the diet.
Yeah.
But I think you're doing the right thing by just even using that language of helping them understand, how does this food make you feel?
Okay.
So almost like a scanner, a body
Right.
scan, if you will. Like, how does this food feel in your belly when you run around? Or notice your energy levels. Do you have more energy when you eat the banana, or more energy when you eat the chocolate chip cookie?
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask them that after 30 minutes and it'll probably be the same. But if you ask them that, an hour later, do you notice that when you have the banana, you still have more energy versus when you had the cookie,
Mm-hmm.
you crashed and now you're tired again and you need to sit down and take a break.
Yeah.
So helping them make those connections.
Okay.
One of the things we've always tried to do is to have those nutrient dense foods available first.
Okay.
So if we were going to serve dinner, serving a salad and putting that on the table and eating that table style, or family style, I should say. So that way, when everybody was really hungry, that's what we ate first.
Mm.
And then once that they were finished with that, then we would bring out the other foods,
Okay.
just because we wanted to make sure that we filled our bodies up with nutrients first, because they were the most important, and then working in the other foods. I always try to have a veggie tray out when I'm cooking dinner. So
Ah,
that way, if they're hungry, I'll say 50% of the time they pull up a stool,
yeah.
and 50% of the time they're like, ugh, I'll just wait till dinner. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Because I think, what is the worst that can happen? They fill up on vegetables and then not eat dinner.
Yeah.
Like, that is still a parenting win.
Right.
If your
For
kid
sure.
eats vegetables for dinner, like, you still are a rock star with that.
Yeah.
And just having those foods available, and, again, not making them taboo, not making them, oh, we can never have this stuff because this isn't good for our bodies.
Yeah.
All foods are part of a healthy diet.
Right. Okay. I like that. I like that. That has my wheels spinning. Okay. So, when would you recommend somebody seeing a nutritionist?
So, um, well, a couple different reasons. For us, we do a lot with weight management. So people that want to lose weight, gain weight, improve their relationship with food. We have a lot of people who have dieted all their life and have picked up a lot of disordered eating habits,
Yeah.
not necessarily an eating disorder, but disordered eating.
Mm-hmm.
And, that can be helpful, obviously, if there's any medical conditions, like diabetes or hypertension, high cholesterol, autoimmune disease, um, any of that stuff. Diet can play a big role in
Yeah.
managing symptoms or improving symptoms. And, or even somebody who's just looking for, who wants to improve their diet, having somebody just look over, am I getting enough variety? Am I getting enough calories? Do I need more ideas? I need more recipes.
Yeah.
Can you point me in that direction? Usually, they're great resources for where, if they don't have them in-house themselves, they know the better resources to go to and the trusted science behind it.
Right. Okay. Now, okay, so I have a lot of people who exercise, and
Mhm.
they're like, I'm exercising, I'm eating healthy, which they could be, could not, or maybe their view on eating nutrient dense is maybe different, different definition. But how would you, and they're not losing weight, so their goal is to lose weight, to feel good in their skin. What would you do with somebody who is like that? How would
Yeah.
you go through the process?
Well, the first thing that I like to do, and it might sound like a cliche, but I do ask people to journal.
Hmm.
In order to create change, two things need to be present: awareness and ownership. All right. And for a lot of us, we're not even aware of our habits. We overestimate how many fruits and vegetables we eat, and we underestimate sometimes our exercise. Like we think we're doing the right things. Just like you said, our views could be a little skewed of what we think is healthy. But when we actually write things down and we start to look at our habits and our behaviors, we realize, oh, wow, I didn't even realize I was grabbing that afternoon snack. I don't remember. Half the people that I talk to when I do a 24-hour recall and I ask them what they had for breakfast or lunch that morning or that afternoon, they can't remember.
Yeah.
And so putting it on paper, I had one client, I remember one time, I asked her the question how often she dines out or goes out to eat, does takeout. Almost never. And I said, oh, okay. And then we got to the part where I asked her what she ate that day, and she went to Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast. And she stopped at, I don't know if you guys have Wawa's down in Charleston, but it's almost like a Wawa is like, they have sandwiches and it's a gas station, but it's like you can get hoagie sandwiches and they have all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
They're pretty yummy. Yes.
Yeah.
But she went to Wawa for lunch. She grabbed a sandwich there. And then, I forget what else she did. She did went to Dunkin' Donuts in the afternoon for a cup of coffee.
Okay.
And I was like, it's interesting that you mentioned earlier, again, it's not my job to judge. It's just my job to help bring awareness. I was like, it's interesting that you say that you never go out to eat, but yet just in the past 12 hours, you have been out 3 times.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, well, does that count? And I was like, oh, it does. If you didn't prepare it, it counts.
Yeah.
And so she's like, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize. And it was something so harmless. Like she thought she was doing great because she was picking, maybe better choices at those places, but she was still eating out, and eating out typically is more calories, more fat, more sugar, more salt, just the nature.
Yeah.
So that journal and writing things down, a lot of times we keep things swirling in our heads and we think we've got our thoughts straight, but putting it to paper reveals a different story.
Yeah. What is your opinion on an app like MyFitnessPal or something like that?
Those are great tools, again, for awareness.
Okay.
But my number one piece of advice to anybody that I work with is I tell them, before you do anything, you always want to ask yourself the question, can I see myself doing this 5 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is no, then I will please beg you not to start something you have no intention of finishing.
Mm.
And so MyFitnessPal can be great when you don't know, when you have no clue how many calories are in a cheeseburger, or you have no clue how much protein is in that smoothie that you make. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's an awareness tool, but at some point we have to move past an app to teach us how to eat and start relying on our own body's cues, because that's where we get long-term results, because we take our body wherever we go. Yeah. And a lot of people, oh my gosh, I couldn't write down what I ate, so I had no clue. And that panic then usually creates a place where, well, now because I can't log my stuff, I might as well just do whatever I want because the day is lost. Right. So I think it can be a helpful tool in the beginning, but it's not somewhere I want people to stay long-term.
Gotcha.
The other important piece of journaling is ownership. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at journals where, everybody writes down what they want me to see. And then as soon as it turns a little ugly, they'll write down party or picnic, or I'm not going to tell you because they don't want to take ownership for their behaviors. And I was like, listen, I love to see your beautiful journals filled with all these great foods, but if you're gaining weight, then clearly I'm not seeing the whole picture here. Yeah. And that's a form of vulnerability, right? Like to say I screwed up and I overate. I can understand where people are coming from, but the number one thing is you have to learn how to assess, not judge. There's a very big difference between assessment and judgment. Yeah. Judgment always brings guilt and shame, which, as we learned earlier, never motivate. Right. Assessment allows you to, kind of step back, look at the behaviors, look at the patterns, and come up with constructive solutions.
Right. Yeah. Um, okay. So for somebody who is like, let's say like, journaling or whatever, um, do you put them on like your goal is, to lose weight? What do you think is like the most valuable thing? Are you looking at the number of calories they're eating? Are you trying to have them focus on the macros, the fats, the proteins, and the carbs? Are you focusing on like counting fiber? Are you focusing on counting vegetables and fruits? Like, what is your kind of, I guess, direction that you put your clients towards?
Yeah. The first thing I do is I focus a lot on hydration
Okay. Yeah.
because most people are chronically dehydrated.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like here's another tip. If you open up the refrigerator door and you don't know what you want, you're not hungry. You're actually
Oh,
thirsty.
okay.
So our thirst mechanism is a lot weaker than our hunger. And so we often mistake the two. And just drinking more water can have ridiculous results, like just that one little swap. So I always recommend half your body weight in ounces. That's how much fluid you should be drinking. If you're exercising, obviously you're going to need a little bit more. Most people are not getting that much.
Yeah.
Most people are, they're drinking maybe a water bottle a day, but then they're drinking their Diet Cokes or their coffee,
Yeah.
and they get to the point where they're really not drinking enough fluid. And then if their thirst mechanism is weak, they're often choosing food when really all they were was thirsty.
Yeah.
So that's usually where I start. And I really, a lot of my practice, I start with how do you identify hunger?
Mm.
Because for a lot of people that are overweight, it's because they're overeating.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they're overeating is because they're eating in times other than physical hunger.
Mm.
So helping them identify how does your body communicate hunger? Because then when you are in those emotional moments, you can remove yourself from the situation and look at it very objectively. Like, am I experiencing these signals? If yes, then I need to go eat because my body's clearly telling me I need to do that. If no, then I've got to sit here and figure out, number one, what emotion am I feeling? Number two, how do I sit through that emotion and not react to it?
Mm.
Right? We don't like to feel uncomfortable. Typically, emotional hunger is a rattling in our chest,
Oh.
where physical hunger is lower, it's in our stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we feel that rattling going on in our, somewhere between our chest and under our chin, we just assume that means hunger.
Mm.
And so I try to do a lot of that in the beginning. People love to add, people hate to subtract, right? Adding's easier.
Yeah.
Think back to school, right? If you're helping your kids out, I'd rather add all day than subtract.
Yeah.
You got to borrow, you got to subtract one. Like, we're all doing the virtual schooling here. It's not easy.
Right. Yeah.
But adding's so much easier. So how do we get more fruits and vegetables in our diet? So I personally recommend 2 servings of fruits and or vegetables at every main meal.
Okay.
And so I do tell people you want to get 2, ideally 2 different fruits and or vegetables, because variety is the spice of life. And if you eat 2 servings of bananas at breakfast every day, you're going to get sick of bananas really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you're not getting the nutrients that maybe another fruit could provide.
Mm.
So we want to make sure that they're different. We want to make sure there's 2 at every meal, because if we're ever going to hit our goals for the day, so for women, I recommend 7 servings of produce a day. Men, I recommend 9. If you're ever going to get to that goal, you've got to start at breakfast. Dinner cannot be your redeeming meal.
Yeah.
Right? So many of us are like, I eat my vegetables at dinner. Well, what happens when the night doesn't go as planned and you end up grabbing a pizza on your way home from work?
Yeah.
Now you're going to go a whole day without a vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to get some of those servings in earlier in the day so that if dinner does happen to be a wash, all is not lost.
Yeah. So with the produce, the 7 for women, so that's fruits and vegetables, and you recommend both.
I recommend always 1 up on vegetables than fruit. So
Okay.
that's typically 4 vegetables and 3 fruits.
Yeah.
But I also recommend when you eat 2 servings of produce with every meal, what it ends up doing is crowding out the junk.
Yeah.
So like, for example, let's say for breakfast, you eat a big bowl of cereal, right? And that bowl of cereal fills you up for a certain amount of time. And now I'm going to tell you, all right, Lauren, I need you to add 2 servings of fruit to that cereal. And you're going to tell me, oh, well, that's too much food. Like,
Yeah.
I can't finish my food, or I'm not hungry in a couple hours. So what am I going to tell you to do? I'm going to tell you, right? Eat a smaller bowl of cereal.
Yeah.
Most people like say, get rid of the fruit. I'm like, no,
No.
no, that's
Yeah.
this is your template.
Right.
Like, this never changes.
Yeah.
But what it will do is it'll start changing your portions of some of the foods that maybe are more energy dense and not as much nutrient dense.
Okay. Okay. So then from there, like, do you recommend a certain, I know this is like everybody's caught up in the protein. How much protein? How much protein? What is your recommendation? Do we need as much protein as is kind of like, we're taught, like, shoved in our faces, like protein bars and protein shakes and, protein water and, all of that.
All the stuff, yes.
Yeah.
Protein. I mean, the benefits of protein are it does take a little bit longer to digest, so it leaves you feeling fuller longer than, say, some of your carbohydrates. But your body does run on carbs, and that is your body's preferred fuel source. Talk to anybody that does a no carb diet, and they are miserable, right? They're not fun to be around because that's not what the body was designed to live off of.
Right.
So I typically tend to suggest balancing carbs and proteins at every single meal.
Okay.
I used to teach carbs, proteins, and fats every single time you eat, but fat follows protein.
Yeah.
It's like the annoying little brother that you can't get rid of.
Right.
Right. And so we don't necessarily have to seek out fat. It typically comes with protein. But having that great balance of carbs and proteins every time you eat, if you're doing that several times throughout the day, you are getting enough. Now, if you are lifting heavy or you have a specific goal with strength training, obviously your protein needs are going to be a little bit higher. If you are an athlete, if you are going through menopause, menopausal women, their protein needs are a little bit higher.
Okay.
So there always are exceptions, but we do not need 40% of our diet coming from protein.
Okay.
Usually around that 15 to 20% is actually what our body needs and what it thrives on. But that doesn't necessarily have to be meat. You can get plenty of plant sources. So I'm always recommending a great balance of both.
Okay, interesting. So there's no one size fits all. Like for women, you should have a certain number of grams.
Oh, absolutely. Because again, that's the number one thing. That's back to diet. It's like
Yeah.
you have to do this and
Right.
eat this then. One of the things you had asked me earlier was what are some of the things I focus on? I focus a lot on this concept called proactive eating.
Okay.
And basically what that means is we eat for our anticipated activity. We
Yeah.
don't eat in reaction to our past activity.
Okay.
So a lot of people, this is a very characteristic day. I'm going to be good today. We'll bring this full circle back to the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm going to be good today. And so they eat a very small breakfast. And that's easy to do because typically the mornings, you've got your cup of coffee, you are distracted with work or the kids or driving kids around somewhere. And then all of a sudden it's lunchtime and I'm going to be good today. So I'm going to have my salad with grilled chicken because that's what a good person does. And then somewhere around like 3 or 4 o'clock, your blood sugar drops. And you start to just start looking around, or your kids might be having an afternoon snack, or you get home from work, or you get home from the gym and you're starving, right? Because you haven't really eaten anything all day, even though you were extremely active. You were moving around, you were thinking, right? We sometimes don't even value how many calories it takes to think and focus and concentrate.
That's an exercise of its own.
Right? I mean, you see it when kids get home from school. They act like they've never eaten before.
Yeah.
Right? It takes a huge amount of calories to sit in a chair and focus all day long.
Yeah.
And so we do all this activity all day long. Meanwhile, we eat like, we're punishing ourselves.
Right.
We had a cup of coffee and, an egg, maybe, if that. And then for lunch, we have our salad with chicken. And then 3, 4, or 5 o'clock hits, and we just start picking.
Mm.
And we pick and we pick. And then all of a sudden, our body is like, oh my goodness, you are really hungry. And
Yeah.
we pick and we pick and we pick. And we get to the point where it's dinner time and you're not even hungry for dinner because you've eaten enough calories for dinner
Yeah.
through all your tortilla chips or whatever you're picking on. But we know that when you eat together as a family, there is a lower chance of your kids getting involved in drugs and alcohol and everything else. So
Yeah.
I made this food, we're going to eat it as a family, but now there's all this guilt and the shame because now I've overdone it, I've blown it. So let's finish off the ice cream because tomorrow I'm going to be good and I don't want it in the house
Yeah.
as a potential threat.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, even though we're the most active at the beginning of the day,
Mhm.
we're eating very little calories. But then at the end of the day, when we're more sedentary, when we're sitting down, watching a TV show, scrolling through our phone, that's when we're eating all the calories.
Yeah. So
And so it's
true.
backwards.
Yes.
And your body is not designed to burn calories the same way at all times during the day.
Hmm.
So we know for a fact that your body burns 50% more calories at breakfast than it does at dinner.
Wow.
And so if we're eating the largest volume of our food at nighttime,
Yeah.
because we're trying to either intentionally or unintentionally, for some people it's, I just got busy and I
Right.
lost track of time and I didn't eat. Like, they're not doing it for necessarily diet purposes,
Hmm.
but for a lot of people and a lot of women, they are. I'm
Hmm.
going to be good today. I'm not going to eat. And then, their blood sugar finally catches up with them. Interestingly enough, willpower is based on blood sugar. So
That.
if you are not fueling yourself,
Yeah.
then you should not be surprised why you have no willpower with
Yeah.
the cookies at night.
Right. That's pretty profound too. Like when you're like putting that, willpower has to do with blood sugar. Yeah, it's like, why am I not strong enough? It has nothing to do with your mental health, it's
No.
or your mindset. Those physical aspects that are getting in the way. And making those desire and that hunger and all the feelings that are associated with food. That is very, very interesting. So it seems like when you talk with a patient too, or a client, you are kind of getting down to the mindset behind food, and you're almost like fixing working on that first before you tap into like a nutrition plan, things like that. Is that correct? Or
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have any data on this stat, but I say pretty much 98% of people that walk into my office know what they should do.
Mhm.
They just don't know how to get out of their own way.
Yeah.
And so, for a lot of us, we associate winding down and relaxing with a snack,
Yeah.
right? So to tell somebody, I'm just not going to eat after 8 o'clock, right? I can tell you that's your body isn't, your body's kind of more in storage mode at that time of day.
Hmm.
It's not really concerned with burning calories because your body's kind of getting set up for the nighttime routine
Right.
where, it's going into cellular repair and restoration. And I can tell somebody that and they can understand it logically in their head. But all of a sudden, when that clock hits 9 o'clock and they start getting twitchy,
Hmm.
because they haven't dealt with maybe all of their emotions during the day,
Yeah.
or, their favorite show comes on and this is where they habitually get a snack and sit down and kind of, basically tap out for the night.
Hmm.
Right. I've had a client tell me already, she's like, but this is how I check out at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, well, maybe we should talk about that,
Yeah.
because once you start fixing the mindset, then all these opportunities that are so challenging, they're less often
Right.
because you have a better way of handling that rattling, right? Remember that rattling in your
Yeah.
chest? You have a better understanding of what's going on and you're able to talk yourself off the ledge because you realize food isn't going to fix this.
Right.
And sometimes that stress cycle, it's only 90 seconds.
Wow.
Like at any point in time, you are 90 seconds away from feeling different. But in the moment, oh my gosh, I got to do something about this right now. Because if I don't have this chocolate right now, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. I can literally talk to you all night about this, and maybe I'll have to have you on the show again because nutrition is such a there's so many different rabbit holes you can go down, and it can be very consuming and overwhelming. We almost put it like on this pedestal. We want to be told exactly what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, all the things. So but where can listeners find you if they have questions? Do you have like an online type program, or can you explain that?
Yeah, so we are probably the easiest ways are we're on Instagram and Facebook. So at Body Metrics Health is
Okay.
our handle. Body Metrics is the company that I own with my husband. And then I'm also on the podcast Nourish, Eat, Repeat. So if you want more information or more insight onto some of this mindset work around food, I do a lot. But a lot of my practice is one-on-one
Mhm.
clients, which is through insurance, which is great. But we also have some programs. We run a Jumpstart program, which is a 6-week high-level accountability program
Ooh.
that a lot of people enjoy because, like I said, people know what they should do, but they need somebody to kind of
Yeah.
guide them through it and call them out and hold them accountable to get the results they're desiring.
Right. I love that. So I will put all of that information in the show notes. Now, is that something like the Jumpstart program? Is that something they can do like, if they're out of state
Yes,
or?
that's a virtual group program.
Okay. That's
So
amazing. Okay. So I will leave all of that information in the show notes. Now, before we go, so my goal is always to connect people. And especially in a time like during COVID. So I created these conversation cards for my Etsy store so listeners can create conversations of their own, either at Zoom night with friends or, date night or icebreakers at work, seminars, whatever. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. From the deck. They're like geared toward like personal development. Is that okay with you?
yeah, but I'm super nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous.
Which is funny because I actually did my research on you and I
Oh,
screenshotted some of the questions to like a group of my best friends. And we
oh,
have started going through some of the questions.
oh, I love that. Oh, that
Yes.
that makes me so happy. Yay.
So
Um,
now
my
I'm nervous though.
husband is going to, I don't know, I think, okay, so depending on when I get the show out, I think you might be after we do the conversation cards, but I'm going to have my husband on. And it's funny because we've been together for 15 years. So like we were babies when we met, but we have like very like different like types of like personalities and things, but that makes us work. But I'm going to ask him these questions on the show. So I'm interested to see his answers. But the first one is, what would you want your younger self to know?
Uh, okay, that's a great question. Um, I would want my younger self to know it's okay to lighten up a little bit
Mm.
and not to take things so seriously. Have fun. Um, I'm such a rule follower
Mhm.
that I missed out on a lot of things because I was so scared. And I wish I would have known to relax a little bit more and enjoy the moment versus being so high strung and focused on what was coming up next.
I love that. Yeah, same. That's like that type A, like
Hmm.
personality. Yeah. Okay, what do you do to relax? You have 5 kids.
Oh, um, I'm typically I run.
Okay.
That helps me relax a lot. I do that. Exercise is just a form of self-care. Um, Relax. I love jigsaw puzzles.
Really?
Um, the problem is I do nothing else. So I don't cook for my family. I don't clean anything. I don't do laundry until that puzzle is done.
Oh.
My husband hates when I pull out another puzzle because he's like, great, we won't see you for a couple days. That's just great.
I'm
So
relaxing. This is
I'm
me
relaxing. This
relaxing.
is unless you want to help me do this puzzle, then
Yeah.
go away.
Oh
So
my gosh. That's fun. Oh my. Yeah, I've never been a good puzzle person. Actually, in kindergarten, I was scarred because um it was like a six-piece puzzle and I could never get it. I was in kindergarten, 5 years old, and my kindergarten teacher timed us, and so that created anxiety. And then she brings my mom in thinking I might have some kind of learning disability because I can't solve this
oh,
piece puzzle. Just word puzzles. I have this like major anxiety when it comes to anything puzzles because I'm like, am I being timed? I'm like, there's something wrong with me. I can't solve this, but
that's terrible.
that just brings that back up. But
I'm so
it's
sorry. I brought back all those bad
no, no, no,
memories.
no, no.
Trauma.
That's just what I thought. Like, I envy you. Like, how do you do that? Like, that's amazing. What causes one person to relax causes another person stress. Isn't that like, it's
That's
fun?
isn't that amazing? Just again,
Yes.
like with diets, there is no one size fits all. What is
Yes,
helpful to somebody is not helpful to another.
for sure. Okay. So, and then the last one, what would be your dream vacation?
Oh, so it would be probably where it's warm because I hate cold weather more than anything.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be a beach, like a lake or some near some body of water, but somewhere where I can be active. So whether it's hiking or biking or walking or just checking out new scenery. But I just love the way it makes me feel, and I love exploring new areas. Um, like I know I can't stop talking about nutrition. It's just a problem I have. But I always tell my clients, I'm like, please, if you go away on vacation, please don't ever go to the hotel gym. Like you can do a gym anywhere. Like go out, go explore, go make a memory somewhere. So there definitely would be water involved, but down south is where I would love to end up someday. So probably somewhere on the coast of South Carolina or would be my dream.
Yeah, it is beautiful here. And I think coming from a place where it is cold, like we lived in the Midwest forever, and then coming here, it honestly makes you appreciate things more because in January, February, when you can be outside and, enjoy, the weather and it's freezing cold at home with wind chills, like sub-zero, ridiculous. So it will make you appreciate, it makes you a little bit hard. And then you come here and you're like, oh my God, I'm so thankful. So one day I know you'll be here.
Yes, that is the goal.
Yes. So thank you so much. I had so much fun talking to you. I think the listeners are going to get so much out of this episode. Now, if you're a listener, please leave a review if you love this episode or tag us on Facebook or Instagram and let us know what you learned from the episode, what you loved from the episode. It would really help us out. And remember, you got this. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you love this episode, make sure you are subscribed so you know when more episodes come available. My goal is to inspire others to become their vision, and one way to get the word out is with reviews. I would really appreciate it if you left an honest review on iTunes, and it would mean so much to me. Thanks again, and remember to go after the life you want. Bye, guys.